Welcome, and thank you for attending the workshop that we're having this afternoon. We held 3 workshops on February 26th, which we went forward in spite of the snow, and we had about 100 people show up, so that was great news. I'm Anne Marie Townsend. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development with the City of Dover, and I'm going to go through the city's side of the Downtown Development District program. Karen Horton with the Delaware State Housing Authority will be going through the state grant program. And then as we wrap up, we will also have Joan Larrabee here from the State Historic Preservation Office who can answer any questions you may have about the state historic tax credits. So the Downtown Development District Act was unanimously adopted by the General Assembly in June of last year and signed by the governor. There were to be, in the first round, 3 designations, no more than 1 in each county. And there was funding that came through the bond bill of $7 million. This year's proposed bond bill has another $7 million, and that is currently in the process of reviewed through the General Assembly. We know it's a tight budget year, so we're hoping that at least a lion's share of that stays intact. Okay. So there was an application process to select the districts, and they looked at 3 things. 50% of the application was based on need and impact, and that was looking at the crime data, the census data, and looking to see that there really is a need for this type of investment. Then 30% was based on the district plan, and that was, okay, we've identified the issues. What's the plan for addressing the issues? What are the clear implementation strategies? And then 20% of the application was rated based on the local incentives and the quality of the local incentives. Most of the presentation today will be going through the incentives. The applications were submitted. They were due November 1st, and they were reviewed by the Cabinet Committee on State Planning Issues. And then on January 11th, Governor Markell designated 3 downtown development districts, Wilmington, Dover, and Seaford. So Dover, just to give you a sense of Dover's plan, we used 2 planning documents to make up our plan. The first is the Dover Transit Center Neighborhood Plan that was the result of a 5-day charrette in the fall of 2010. This really gets to a lot of the design principles of things like bringing the buildings to the street, having quality architecture, how you integrate open space, putting parking where it's less visible, but very functional. So it really is a design-based approach. The second plan is more recent. It was literally hot off the press. I think it came out the day before the applications were due to the state. And this is the Restoring Central Dover plan. This was led by NCAW, and there is a steering committee that oversaw this process and is overseeing the implementation that's really made up of stakeholders from throughout the downtown area. It is churches, residents, businesses, the cities represented, housing providers. It really comprises the whole spectrum of stakeholders. And this plan really starts to get at a lot of the socioeconomic issues that have hindered downtown redevelopment, and really some of those quality of life issues that have caused people to want to look elsewhere. It gets into things like the blight and the crime that we've been struggling with. And really, in order to be effective in revitalizing the whole downtown, we need to address those issues. So the city's district is on the map up here. It's on the front of your folder. It's out there, so it's out. We're trying to let everybody know where the district is. It includes the Central Business District, the Lockerman Street corridor, and the arteries that come into that, and the adjacent neighborhoods to the north. The need was clearly demonstrated in this area. According to the 2010 census, 84% of the occupied dwelling units within this area are rental. That is a really high rental rate. Rental housing is good. It is necessary. We've all been renters at some point in our life, but we need a balance. And that balance is what we're striving for. So 84% really starts to throw off that neighborhood stability. Additionally, we have high vacancy here. There's a lot of vacant land in the Restoring Central Dover plan, which has a slightly larger study area than the development district, there is 25 football fields worth of vacant land. We have, in terms of vacant buildings, 49 registered vacant buildings in the downtown development district as of October. And then since 2008, the city has demolished 26 buildings within this area due to severe code enforcement problems. So this is an area that clearly the need is demonstrated. So what are our goals in the downtown development district? We need business growth, whether it's bolstering existing businesses, allowing existing businesses to expand, or bringing in new businesses. Those are all part of we really need a thriving business community. We want mixed-use development, retail, services on the first floor, apartments, offices upstairs. Again, apartments over existing retail spaces. There are a number of retail spaces in the downtown that have what could be apartments above them that just haven't been fit out because of the cost to do that. But what I will tell you is where we do have apartments over top of stores, they rent quickly. They don't stay vacant. So there is the demand. In terms of the neighborhoods, with that high rental rate, we really want to increase home ownership. We want to bring back that balance of home ownership and rental to really have a more stable community that way. And what we don't want to lose in the context of all of this is affordable housing. So we've been working with an array of affordable housing providers to make sure that all of the plans for the downtown include affordable housing, really with a focus on affordable home ownership. And then we have a lot of key intersections that either have vacant lots or vacant buildings. And we want to see those areas come to life again. So we want to see new buildings where there's vacant land, and we want to see vacant buildings occupied to really make those intersections something special. So what does all of this mean? Cash rebates on construction costs, fee waivers, tax abatements and tax credits, facade improvement grants, and architectural grants. There's money available, either through waiving of taxes and fees or through cash. So the biggest piece of the downtown development district that I think really gets people excited is this cash rebate. And Karen's going to go into a lot more detail about the cash rebate. But the state of Delaware, through the State Housing Authority, is having a grant program up to 20% cash rebate on construction costs that exceed $25,000. Kent County is the only one of the 3 counties at this point in time who has stepped up and said, we're going to get in the game too. And they have agreed to match the state's grant up to $10,000. These are eligible on the capital construction costs only, not on the soft costs, not on, if you're talking about a restaurant, not on things like tables and chairs and plates, but really on the construction costs. And again, the first $25,000 is out of pocket. And Karen will talk more about that. So the fee waivers are one of the city incentives. The city waives the building permit fees. And when we say building permit, we mean building permit, fire permit, plumbing permit, and mechanical permits. All of those fees are waived. You still have to get your permits, but we'll waive the fees. Sewer and water impact fees, the city's portion only, we still collect the Kent County portion. So we've expanded this incentive under the Downtown Development District program. It used to only apply to multi-story mixed-use construction. Now it's just a waiver of the city's impact fee within the district. And a new incentive we added is business license fee waivers for new businesses for a period of 3 years. So that, again, helps that startup period where the cash flow in a business isn't quite as strong, and sometimes that $100, or, the business license fees vary, but, sometimes that $100 or $200 could be significant to a business in the early years. And then we've got a number of tax benefits. The first one is another one of our new incentives. And this is a rebate of the buyer's portion of the transfer tax when a certificate of occupancy is obtained. So you buy a piece of property, you pay your transfer tax, you build something on it. When you get a certificate of occupancy, the city will rebate that transfer tax, the buyer's portion. We have a tax abatement on the value of the improvement for a period of 10 years. So you have a $100,000 property. The assessed value is $100,000. You make improvements to the property. Now it's assessed at $200,000. For a period of 10 years, you will continue to pay taxes on that as if it is $100,000 value. So it really, and we'll see an example where this really does become a lucrative incentive. The state historic preservation tax credits, what we didn't put on here is there's also a federal historic preservation tax credit. If you get into the state's program, you're pretty much 90% through to be able to get the federal. Like I said, Joan Larrabee can explain that if anybody has any detailed questions later. And then the city has a tax credit program for exterior improvements to historic properties. So all of these incentives, there are brochures in the packets. We can certainly answer any detailed questions. Oh, I keep doing that, okay. So home ownership, again, wanting to bolster home ownership, encourage people to want to buy their homes and make their primary residence downtown. We have a number of incentives. Some of them have been on the books for a while, but we're going to work on better promoting them. We have a property tax waiver for owner-occupied homes, which is essentially a phase-in of your property taxes. So on the first year, you wouldn't pay any property taxes. The second year, you would pay 25% of your tax burden. The third year, 50%. The fourth year, 75%. And then the fifth year, you would start paying your full tax burden. The city has a citywide transfer tax waiver for first-time home buyers. And that incentive is citywide. However, within the downtown development district, the seller can also get that same transfer tax waiver if they are selling to somebody who's going to use that home as their primary residence. And in addition, you may be eligible, you would have to income qualify as low to moderate income to get the Dover First Start down payment assistance through our community development block grant program. When our committee met this week to rank applications through the CDBG program, they allocated $60,000 to the down payment assistance and specified that it needs to be spent within the downtown area. So again, the city is trying to make sure that we are focusing our resources in the area. And then a couple of other incentives. The Downtown Dover Partnership has agreed to provide architectural assistance of up to $5,000. And the way this will work is the first $1,000 is 100% refundable upon certificate of occupancy. And after that first $1,000, it's a 50-50 match. And what we have found with a lot of the startup businesses is business owners don't necessarily realize that when they're moving into a tenant space, there are code requirements that may come into play and that they really need an architect on board. And we thought the best way to make sure that this happens is to provide the financial assistance to make it happen, because again, that startup time is always very tight for small businesses. The city has had a very successful, through the Downtown Dover Partnership, facade grant program for many years. It was initially funded through state money. When that money dried up, the Downtown Dover Partnership began to fund it with its own resources because it was such a successful program. So that is another incentive that we add to this area. The Sustainable Energy Utility, also known as Energize Delaware, and their incentives are for residential or mixed use where it's commercial and residential. They are offering reduced cost energy audits. So an energy audit on a home is normally about $400. They're doing them for $50 in the Downtown Development District. And they are increasing the rebates that they have available for energy efficiency improvements, such as it could be windows, it could be Energy Star appliances, things that will reduce the energy consumption in a home. They're offering higher rebates in this district. You know, we're putting a lot of resources on the table to encourage people to make investments. So we want to make sure we're protecting that investment and that we're also coupling that with accountability. The city has had a strong code enforcement program for a number of years. Like I said earlier, we've demolished 26 buildings that were dangerous buildings in the downtown since 2008. We don't like demolishing buildings, but again, if it's a danger, we need to take it off the map. So, you know, there is an expectation that people comply with the code requirements. So if we have a rental inspection program, for instance. If we have people who own rental properties, we're going to make sure that we're continuing to do our rental inspections so that those are kept to code. Because, you know, a landlord now can get these incentives to make the improvements that are necessary. And here's where, you know, you kind of put it all together and say, what is the value of this? And I've got a spreadsheet that has a number of examples. But this is a real-life project, something that happened in the last year. And we said, okay, what if all of these incentives existed? What would it cost? So this is a $350,000 renovation of an existing building that happens to be in the historic district that would have a state rebate of $65,000. The Kent County rebate, the full amount, they got the building permit fee waiver. They had 2 EDUs, so they paid impact fees for 2 equivalent dwelling units. That would have been waived. The tax on the value of the improvement. This is a property where the assessed value more than doubled. So over a 10-year period, they're saving almost $23,000 in taxes. Just city real estate taxes. The transfer tax on the property was $5,100. And the state historic tax credit is currently estimated at about $15,000. But you can see this really starts to add up. And this is what I would call a modest project. $350,000 is a lot of money, but when you look at getting $147,000 back in incentives, that's pretty significant. That's the last slide. What I do want to do before turning it over to Karen is just quickly go through a mapping tool that we've developed, because if you are putting together an application or if you're looking for properties, this can be very helpful. So if you go to the www.cityofdover.com and click on Downtown Development District, there's a link that says Dover's Downtown Development District Interactive Map. Okay, so you'll get that when you come up. And what you'll see is this blue district is the Downtown Development District. The orange boundary is what was the downtown redevelopment target area that has been in our code for about 20 years. And then we've got the historic districts on this. The green pieces are properties that are listed for sale. The yellow are properties that are listed for lease. And then there are some orange properties that would be available for lease or purchase. So I'm going to just type in an address. I'm going to put 101 West Lockerman Street. That's where the downtown, hold on, I need to say Dover. And so you're going to see this. So this is the address here. So I can click on this, and I can see that this is eligible for the 20% rebate, who administers that program, and then you can click on here for more info. It's eligible for the Kent County rebate, the business license fee waiver, and it gives you contact information for each of those. If I'm looking at a property that's available for lease, it tells you who to contact. And then if you have a project and you're submitting an application, the Delaware State Housing Authority grant guidelines require that you submit an exhibit that shows where it is. So for that, you can develop a PDF that you can save, and it puts all the pretty information on it for you. and you can submit that with your application. So, and you know, I won't go into it, but there's a drawing tool and all that wonderful stuff so that you can circle the property you're looking at using the tools. If you have trouble with this, we are glad to help you. We have also committed that we will help, the city's planning office will help people by providing statements of conformance with the district plan to submit with your application to the state. We want this program to be successful. We want it to be as easy to navigate as possible. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen, and she will go through the state incentives in great detail.
Hi, I'm Karen Horton, and I'm with the Delaware State Housing Authority, and I'm just going to briefly go through the DDD grant program. So what is the grant program? This grant's for investors who make real property investments within a designated district, and the investments conform with the district plan. It's available for a broad range of projects. This includes residential, mixed-use, commercial, and industrial projects. And there is that $25,000 out-of-pocket threshold that Anne-Marie referred to. Think of it as a deductible. Once that deductible is met, then your construction costs over that, 20% of it comes back to you as a grant. Also, the activity has to conform with the district plan. Grants are available to virtually anybody. This includes for-profit builders and investors and nonprofits, businesses, and even homeowners. However, government entities are the only ones that are not eligible for the grant. For eligibility purposes, a qualified real property investment are capital expenditures incurred after district designation necessary for the rehabilitation, new construction, or expansion. And these are your hard costs. Examples include exterior, interior, structural, mechanical improvements to the building or facility. And again, you have to meet that $25,000 deductible. Because we have a strong fiduciary responsibility for state funds, and there are some activities that really just don't contribute to community revitalization, the following activities are not eligible. This is adult entertainment establishments defined by Dell Code, check cashing facilities, liquor stores. You can have a restaurant that serves alcohol, but not liquor stores. Also, pawn and gun shops, tattoo parlors. So, also soft costs are not eligible. This includes site acquisition, your permit fees, your underground septic, sewer, electrical. Now, once it attaches to the building, it is eligible. And so to ensure that the funds were balanced in our distribution, we have a small project set aside, which is really streamlined for small investors. And then we have a large project set aside that has a reservation process just to provide assurance that the project will be funded once the project is complete. For the small project set aside, it's really a straightforward process. Once you confirm that the project is located in a DDD and in conformance with the district plan, what you do is you just keep track of all your invoices and receipts of capital costs that occurred after district designation. And then once the project is placed in service, you have 45 days to submit an application. And this can be any time of the year. And once we confirm that the requested, let me back up. Once we confirm that the grant requested matches the work that was completed, we will disperse the grant within 60 days, as long as funds are available. We really would be surprised in this first year if funds were not available. And so we're going to do everything we can to fund these small projects. Now, if the situation arose where we ran out of money, What we would do is hold on to those small project applications until another funding allocation came, and those projects would be first in line to receive funds. An example of how the small project set-aside would work is that, say, an investor spends $300,000 to expand an existing commercial building, and $230,000 of the investment was chargeable to a capital account. You would deduct the $25,000 deductible, which would leave $205,000 eligible for the grant. You would times that by 20%, and so your grant back to you would be $41,000. Okay. For the large project set aside, we placed the remaining $5,650,000 in this set aside, and this was to support those transformational large projects that can really impact community revitalization. In addition, there is up to an additional $500,000 that can be obtained for those truly transformational projects. It's just calculated at a lower rate. And just to give a demonstration, looking at this continuum, you see the $25,000 threshold, and then you see for a $2.5 million investment, approximately, with that deductible, that $25,000, you would get a grant back of $500,000, and this reflects a 20% calculation for that grant. Now, once you get over that amount, it's calculated at this lower rate, and it's in our program manual, which is on our website. You can see there's a very elaborate spreadsheet that explains how that sliding scale works and exactly what you would get. But you would have to invest $20 million to get that additional $500,000. So it is calculated at a much lower rate, but it's still an additional $500,000. It is capped at $1 million per building or facility over a 5-year consecutive year period. But it's all good stuff. Lost my place here for a minute. Now you can have multiple owners that own that building work together within the building. It's very important that you coordinate with those other owners because of that $1 million cap. And we have forms on our website that will help you with that coordination effort. You can also be a tenant in a building or a landlord in a building, and either one can do that investment. You just have to show that you coordinated. So, and again, that $1 million cap applies. Also, for this reservation process, we've had a lot of questions. Why is there a reservation? And the reason is this program is largely based after a program in Virginia called the Enterprise Zone Program. And the difference there is that there was no reservation, and there was no guarantee that once you completed your project that you would get a grant at the end of the day. It was really based on funds that were available. And so when we talked to them and said, what would you change? What are some of the challenges? They said assurance of funds when the project is complete is the biggest challenge, because a lot of investors will not proceed in a very difficult to develop area anyway. So they want that assurance up front, and that's very understandable. So we have created a reservation process. And for this initial year, we're having 2 reservations. The first one is going to be, the deadline for it is next Friday, the 20th. And then what we'll do is after the allocation that hopefully occurs in July, and any leftover remaining funds from this first reservation will go into another round in the fall. And so for this first year, we'll have 2 reservations, but then moving forward, it'll be every approximately sometime in September is when we'll be having an annual reservation process. But to obtain a reservation, you only have to do 3 things. One is to confirm that it's within the DDD, then confirm that it conforms with the district plan, and also show through your application that you are able to start and complete the project within 3 years. And so if there's funds available, you'll get that reservation. And when you get that reservation, it'll be based on the expenses that you projected for that project, and we have a development team with a strong underwriting background, so we'll look at those expenses, make sure that they make sense, And it will be outlined in a reservation agreement that will, say when it's complete, you'll get X amount of money. It'll have certain conditions also included. For example, if after 12 months, you haven't even broke ground, or what our measurement is that 15% of the qualified rural property investments have not been completed yet by the end of 12 months, we will take back the reservation. Also, if the scope or the nature of the project changes substantially from the initial, really that it just changes from that initial reservation agreement, we have the right to withhold the reservation funds. And so, but other than that, you're really pretty much set to go. And let me just proceed here. In the event when there may be more reservations and funding allocated, what we'll do is we'll look at additional state and community priorities. And those projects that have addressed those certain priorities will receive additional consideration. In those cases, only when there are not enough reservation funds to fund all of those projects. And so an example would be, has it been identified as a key priority project within the community's district plan? So if you have been identified as a key priority project, you are very likely going to get that reservation. Does it create permanent jobs? Does it expand housing opportunities? Does it create mixed use? Does it protect historic resources? All of these are considered priorities that are important to local communities as well as to the state. And so that's when we'll take an additional look at projects to see if they meet any of those. If you go to our website and you look at our program manual, and on our website, once you get on there, and it's on the last slide, and it's also in the brochure that's listed in your packet, it's very easy to get to our downtown development grant page. And within there, there's a list of very helpful documents, and one of them is the program manual. And it will show, like, what do we mean by creating permanent jobs? What do we mean by protecting historic resources? And when we developed that, it was really to create a objective yes or no, that really anybody could take a look at it and say, yes, this addresses this, or no, it does not, just to make it as objective as possible. So once you get that reservation, you go ahead and you do your work. Once it's placed in service, what you do is you now get this is what is different than the small project, you get a CPA attestation that attests that the expenses completed are accurate, and this is what they are. You submit that to us, and what we'll do is we'll conduct a compliance review, a site visit, just to make sure everything matches up, and then within 60 days we'll distribute the grant funds. So we try to make it pretty straightforward. Here are two examples, rehab and new construction. For rehab, it's $600,000 is the investment. You have that $25,000 deductible. And then after that, $575,000 are eligible for the grant. And so the grant in that situation would be $115,000. And then for the second example, say it's new construction, this time it exceeds that $2.5 million and it starts to go toward that sliding scale. So here you take away that $25,000 deductible. You have $9,975,000 that are grant eligible. And according to the sliding scale, which is on the that is on the program manual and on the website, you would see that the grant is $700,000. And that is really it. Any questions? This is our website, destatehousing.com, and we have it plastered all over that website. So,
Karen, I don't know if either you or Anne Marie mentioned it, that this is a 10-year designation.
Yes.
So this is not just a one-shot deal. This is a designation that we can utilize over the next 10 years.
very good point.
So we want to encourage our elected officials to continue to fund the grant program so that we can utilize those funds for a 10-year period.
Yes. And that while Dover and Seaford and Wilmington are the only 3 designated districts at this time, you really are in a very unique position because the funds are not going to get spread out too much at this time. It's just you 3 districts. So honestly, this is a wonderful time to invest in downtown Dover, and with all of the incentives that Anne Marie outlined, I just think it's really awesome. So,
And again, this time next year, we're likely to see more designated districts. So if you have a project that you can get in the pipeline, the sooner you can get it in, obviously we want it to be a solid project, but the sooner you can get it in, the better off you are because the less the competition. If they designate 3 or 4 more districts next year, then the funding that exists gets spread, over more jurisdictions. So if you do have something, this is a really great situation to be in here in Dover, being on the front end of it, because right now, the $7 million for this year, there are 3 of us that are eligible. So are there any questions? Anything?
Okay.
Jump at once. Certainly, if you do, go home and look at the materials and you decide that you do have questions, you can give us a call. I'm pretty much always available for this. Karen's been available, as I have her colleagues at the Housing Authority, Kirby and Bill with the city. We've been working on this together, and so we are available to answer questions, to handhold, to do whatever we need to do to make this program successful. Okay.
So you said as districts open up and the competition increases, and this is for 10 years, this district though is never expected to change. These borders will never get larger.
Not without authorization through the state. But our district is 220 acres. The maximum size of a district is 225. So it certainly couldn't expand. In an ideal situation, maybe we, negate the need and shrink it at some point, but again, that would be a process with the state. Yeah, that's very optimistic thinking.
And the reason why the state did that was because that these are highly distressed areas, and so to really concentrate all of these partnerships and resources and incentives into these areas backed by guided by a strong district plan, that you would see more impact and more revitalization.
Are there any other questions? Well, certainly give us a call. If you have any questions, check out our website. We do include links to the state web pages, and we want to work with you, so don't hesitate to call us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So the question about the store.
She said she was going to come at 4:30, but I don't see her. You don't see Joanna, do you?
No, she was
So,
not there.
but their contact information is in the materials that you have. I am not well versed on historic preservation tax credits, so you don't want to ask me those questions.
But a gentleman who was here earlier at the other workshop, he could not praise state historic preservation enough as to how helpful they were to really walk him through the entire process.
Right.
And I thought that was
incidentally-
terrific.
Incidentally, his project was the one that we used as our model of how it would have worked, and I think he was a little disappointed when he saw how if you waited, you're gonna take a whole lot more.
Charlie told me not to tell you about that. I said, he's going to find out.
Yeah, he knows.